Hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock. It's the show that digs deep into the stories behind your favorite cult genre movies. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horne, and I hope to someday not fuck up that intro.
Hey, you know what? It wouldn't be an episode of Cinema Shock if it was perfect. I am co-host Justin Bishop, continuing our series on John Carpenter, The Shape of Dread. Last week on Cinema Shock, we had left Snake Plissken battered, bloody, and standing victorious in the middle of a ring after an intense showdown with professional wrestler Ox Baker. But today we're moving outside of the prison walls to take a look at how Carpenter established the world outside of Manhattan. See, Carpenter wanted the scenes outside of the prison, the police state, to have a cold, high-tech look dominated by lots of neon that would stand in direct contrast to the destroyed, torchlit streets inside the prison walls. And many of these interiors were filmed back in Southern California at locations with ultra-modern architecture such as the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, a dramatic, minimalist steel and concrete structure that already had the look of an authoritarian institute without Carpenter having to spend an extra dime on building a set. It was just there. Just looked like that. The main military tactical room where Bob Houck, Lee Van Cleef's character, monitors the countdown clock, that was filmed at the Sepulveda Dam floor control basin in Van Nuys. The Sepulveda Dam actually proved to be a useful multi-purpose location, as the production also used the exterior of the dam. For the enormous 33-foot tall concrete containment wall that seals off Manhattan, Joe Alves, the production designer, he just built set pieces right up against the existing face of the dam. So a lot of what you see there, other than that little bit that he built, that's all just real. That's all just there. The dam is also used as the location where we see prisoners processed at the beginning of the film, like when we're first introduced to Snake Plissken. And in the movie, it's set at the base of the Statue of Liberty. Now, there's a little bit of trickery here. The shot of the helicopter flying past the Statue of Liberty, that's actually the only sequence in the entire film that was shot on location in New York City. Carpenter and his crew were given unprecedented access to Liberty Island to film the sequence. And according to Carpenter, they were the only film production to ever be granted access to the island at night.
What's even crazier is that they managed to get it, considering like it had been bombed 3 months prior to this.
Yeah.
So
was it bombed or was it like an attempted bombing? I can't remember.
Maybe it was more of an attempted bombing. Yeah. I can't remember the exact story, but yeah.
But security was tight.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that this is some crazy Barry Bernardi work. He is earning that paycheck this time. Like it feels like it could have been one of those moments that Carpenter could have gotten screwed on, but luckily he's built a hell of a crew and has some name value at this point or something, so maybe that's what helped. But still, I can't imagine how it seems rolling up on Liberty Island 3 months after a bombing or attempted bombing and saying, so could we bring some uniformed guys here with some guns and some grenades and shit and hang out one night?
Yeah, I mean, that shot is impressive. I mean, you could assume that it was like miniatures or something like that. And I guess they could have probably pulled it off a different way if they wanted to, but the way that it's shot, I mean, we see a real helicopter flying by the real Statue of Liberty, and then the camera kind of pans down and you've got Tom Atkins walking there outside of it. And now this sequence does feature a clever camera match cut as the camera kind of pans over. The moment it hits the heavy shadows, there's a hidden cut there. And then the remainder of that seamless shot was filmed back at Sepulveda Dam, nearly 3,000 miles away.
I love that move. It's a really cool switch. But honestly, that's not so much filmmaking as it is just how studly Tom Atkins is. Like, he's just such a badass. He can be strolling in New York City, and then he takes a step. He's in Van Nuys. Space-time is nothing to Tom Atkins.
He transcends. He transcends space-time.
That's just what he does. So Carpenter says, like on Liberty Island, though, too, he does make clear, he's like, we were very good stewards of that place. Like, we cleaned up and took care of everything we touched. And I think Deborah Hill tells a story in the on-set. I think it's Deborah Hill. I should have wrote it down, but basically talking about they didn't even know that night for sure, like, that the helicopters were coming. Like, they had booked them, and then something had happened, and then they were like, oh, God, is that helicopter happening? And they were only going to get, like, a limited time of having it fly around or something. But then it was late or something, and they were like, shit, I think something's going on, you know, like, and all of a sudden they hear like the blades, you know.
Wow.
Like, everybody's like cheering. They're like, yes, we're going to get the shot. I think you have to respect that It's hard to wrap my brain around how small the sets they really are shooting on are. Like, I mean, they're big places, but like the areas that they're filming, they're making it feel bigger than it is.
Right.
And I think this is probably the biggest feeling movie that Carpenter has done so far.
So far, yeah.
All of the movies so far seem to be like, locked in. Like The Fog was a town, but I don't know. You still seem like you're getting something and attacking it into like a small location. I think you mentioned before the idea of like all these movies being these siege movies. And this one is no different, but this time instead of like a lighthouse, you're like invading a whole city. And
right. And one of the biggest cities in the country.
Yeah. It is, speaking of the helicopters, it's the first time that Carpenter has even gotten to mess around with some of the bigger equipment like helicopters. And they talk about it in the commentary. He says he fell in love from this movie. Like, it just, there's the scenes where they all get out and are running away from the copters or whatever. This is on the dam, I think. But he and Kurt Russell both, it led to them exploring flying, and they both eventually got pilot's license.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so and Carpenter stayed with helicopters apparently, like he can fly helicopters, and Russell moved to planes, but they're both like became pilots because of becoming enamored with dealing with the helicopters on this movie.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it does give a sense of scale to the movie that you wouldn't get otherwise. I mean, both using, real helicopters, using the real Statue of Liberty, because you feel that you're there on set or on location, more so than you would if it had been a miniature. Now, granted, there's some incredible miniature work on this movie, which we're about to talk about, but there's something about seeing the real Statue of Liberty there that I do think makes it this movie, which is still, $7 million, is still a pretty low budget movie, especially for something of this size, this scope. It does sort of help it feel like a big production.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was funny, though, out of all of that from the commentary, they both seemed irrationally excited, well, as excited as Carpenter ever seems, by the courtesy bus that they rented for the set, like the one that Snake arrives in, handcuffed. Because when it stops, if you watch it, like it tilts to the right automatically when you open the doors to like help people exit, and they were both saying they were on set just like, oh shit, that's so futuristic, that's perfect. That's great.
I think every bus does that now, don't they?
We're in a fascist hellscape and crime's up 400%, but our fucking buses are easy on your knees. Just another piece of side trivia real quick that I just thought was fun is that we're talking about the New York and the Statue of Liberty, Liberty Island, all that stuff. What was really cool is I also did see in an interview J.J. Abrams said that as a kid he loved this movie, but one of the things that always stood out to him is on the movie poster there's the image of the Statue of Liberty head, the severed head in the street, which is not actually in the movie.
Right.
So when he produced Cloverfield, that was one of the first things they said, we've got to get that.
And it's such a great shot in Cloverfield too.
Yeah,
that's funny. I mean, it is an inaccurate piece of marketing, but it is also a great movie poster.
No, it's awesome.
It's great. Well, creating the other shots of the Manhattan skyline required some clever and cost-effective special effects techniques. Carpenter had originally tried to recruit legendary effects wizard John Dykstra of Star Wars fame, but Dykstra's company quoted a $3 million price tag with $1 million up front. That's nearly half the film's entire budget.
It's almost as much as I make to do this show.
Wow. That's a good joke.
I should be doing it every show.
That's not a good way to get people to join Cinema Shock Plus and give us more money. If they're these motherfuckers are making $3 million an episode, no, we're not making Joe Rogan money over here. We're actually losing money.
I was going to say, let's re-edit that. That's how much it costs me to make each one of these shows.
Well, Carpenter instead decided to go the low-budget route, recruiting the special effects team at Roger Corman's New World Pictures, who specialized in bringing in innovative effects at a fraction of the cost of other companies. And one of the young artists working on Corman's company at the time was a 26-year-old named James Cameron. Or credited on the film as Jim Cameron. Actually, I noticed that in the end credits. But Cameron worked on creating matte paintings for the film, as well as serving as the director of photography for the movie's FX unit.
According to Robert Skotak, he was a part of New World Pictures, along with Dennis Skotak, his brother, Gene Rizzardi, Bruce McRae, a guy named Tom Campbell, all of these guys. They were the team for New World Pictures that were doing a lot of these effects. He says that Carpenter actually visited their set during the filming of Battle Beyond the Stars, which I guess he must have been buddying around with Jim Cameron at the time. And Cameron brought him on set, is according to Skotak.
Well, Cameron worked pretty extensively on Battle Beyond the Stars. I think we talked about that a little bit during our James Cameron series, because that was kind of like a big part of James Cameron's background in effects got started really on that. That's the one with where the spaceship looks like boobies, right?
I
don't know
so,
why I'm doing this in my hands.
Well, that's for the Cinema Shop Plus subscribers. No, what I'm saying is, I guess, too, is that the way that Robert Skotak tells it is like John Carpenter is hanging out with Jim Cameron.
Oh, Carpenter's hanging out with Cameron.
Yeah, Carpenter is hanging out with Jim Cameron, and Cameron brought him on set to Battle Beyond the Stars.
Okay.
It was like showing him around the set. It was like, I want you to see what we're doing, and like all of that stuff. So
interesting. I wonder how they knew each other.
yeah, that's what I was curious about. I couldn't find much more about that. And in the commentary, Carpenter's just like, oh, this was done by the legendary Jim Cameron. That's great. But, like he's just very casual about it. But yeah,
They bonded over having the same initials.
That was probably
what it was.
Them and Jesus. So it's anyway, he said that he brought Carpenter on set, and Carpenter was like looking at all the stuff, and they were showing it. I guess the specific thing they were looking at was there was a scene they were doing with something on a planet where there's construction going on the planet, but in the foreground you've got like a ship sitting there, like a model ship, like built, and then in the background the matte painting of space and the rest of the area. And he said like he knew that Cameron was showing Carpenter that stuff, and Carpenter being like, wow, that is crazy that we could do stuff like this. And he said it wasn't long after that in his mind that's exactly what led to Carpenter looking to them for help with what to do with New York. He was talking about how his mind was kind of blown being there, and has said that Carpenter, after that visit to the set, they were happy because they had seen some interviews with Carpenter in the press where he was praising them, what New World Pictures had been able to do, just saying how cool that was. So we're getting into another one of those moments where you're like, it's another level of creativity and care that, well, we know James Cameron has, but the attention to detail is just New World Pictures. This effects group it's literally like 4 or 5 guys, and they're doing all of this shit with just the most innovative minds. It's crazy.
Yeah, because they're having to be creative in a way where they can work within the budgetary constraints that they have.
Exactly.
And I don't want to. I'm not going to get in the weeds on what led Cameron to this point in his career. We do talk about that a good bit during our James Cameron series, so go back and listen to that. It was a good series. But I also don't want to just breeze past his contributions on this, because it's fascinating the way that they pulled this off. So to keep costs low, Cameron and the effects team, they utilized an old school matte painting technique, working directly on large glass panels. He'd create hyper-realistic paintings of the destroyed New York skyline. Then the production set these glass panels up on location in front of the camera lens, precisely lining up the artwork with the live action sets, which allowed the camera to capture the practical sets and Cameron's painted skyline simultaneously in a single live action exposure, meaning that expensive optical compositing and post-production wouldn't be necessary at all. They're doing this all in camera. That's insane to me.
Yes.
Even in 1981, that's not normally how people would do this. And you can find photos of Cameron working on this on set. You can find photos of them setting up this giant glass panel, and lining it up like with the horizon so that they could pull off these photos.
In that On Set with John Carpenter book by Kim Gottlieb Walker, they've got some photos in there of the crew working on some of these models we'll talk about, but also the glass panels you're talking about. It just excites me thinking about just like the creativity of some people, stuff I don't have. But it also, as we're getting into this, it's another one of those things where I'm just like, anybody could do this stuff now, you'd think, with enough passion into it. It's just nuts.
Well, and I think perhaps Cameron's most significant contribution was overseeing the visual effects for the sequence where Snake Plissken actually has to land his glider on the roof of the World Trade Center.
Obviously, these guys couldn't afford like real rooftops or real aircraft. They had to use miniatures to make this thing. It just drives me crazy looking at this. I don't know how to express how excited it makes me. I don't know why this particular movie is just really driving me nuts. But so the first thing he does is Robert Skotak gets a map of Manhattan. He projects it onto a wall, and then with the giant sheet of paper, traces the map out. And that gives you the layout for the fly-in of New York, where everything goes, essentially. And at this time, I think for the actual miniatures and stuff, he said they had like 10 days from when they had started to when they had to get finished with like what they were going to do. And they had that amount of time, not a lot of materials, limited budget, obviously. So they're going to have to create everything out of cardboard and Xerox, basically. So they, in LA, start taking pictures of buildings, just regular buildings, getting different like brick styles and different kinds of textures, I guess, essentially of these buildings. And they're obviously looking for things that look kind of like the buildings they have pictures of from New York. The next least expensive thing that they can think of to do is they create patterns of windows and start Xeroxing them in different ways, like light and dark and that sort of thing. And basically they print them out, have them on sheets of paper. Now, these are not color photographs, mind you, so they have to hand color these with color pencils. Luckily, he says there's a lot of browns, muted grays, rust colors, that kind of thing. So it makes it a little easier as far as coloring goes. But then they're literally pasting these printouts onto the buildings that they're making. So when I say that, the buildings are made out of cardboard. The largest ones are like, he says, like a big cereal box or something, basically. And so that's them making New York. They take like little wooden blocks or squares or whatever. They make their little air conditioning units and pipes, etc., that they like paste on the tops of it. And it's just like you've got the sides and the front, the backs are completely open. It's just insane to me because I'm sure up close it's obviously fake, but the fly-in that they do of the city, I mean, I'm not telling you that every special effect in this movie goes off without a hitch, but I mean, this looks pretty fucking good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so then they, getting back to the point, they made 3 gliders for the movie. There was a 1/3 scale one that Gene Rizzardi made, apparently, and then there was another one that was made of resin, and it was the one they used, like, wingtip to wingtip. I think it was 2 feet long. They would use that mostly for, like, motion, as far as they would, like, mount it, and then that's the one you would see, like, when they needed something of it in motion. Then they said a guy named Brian Shin actually made one along with Robert Skotek that was about a 6-inch wingspan, and they would use that for perspective shots, especially the rooftop landing. So they have this one shot that they call the God's Eye view, where it's looking straight down at the World Trade Center, and you see the craft land on the roof of the World Trade Center, and then of course you have to do the thing where it rides right up to the edge and it's teetering on the edge of the World Trade Center. And again, I keep saying it, but it just blows my mind because what they do is they end up getting a photograph from above the World Trade Center looking down on the World Trade Center. They blow that up a little bit. So it's just a giant photo, maybe like a foot or two big. And they build some stuff 3D on top of it to make it have a little bit of texture, obviously, on the roof. And they take the little mini glider and they put it on the edge of it. And they use some, like, you said it was like tungsten wire, and they tie it to it and they just wiggle it to make it teeter on the edge of the World Trade Center. And it's just a photograph. And I'm sorry, it's driving me crazy. But these, like, the biggest issues we ran into were just that we've got this picture of the thing on it, and we're just having to make sure that the edges of the photo are not in the shot and are kind of darkened out so you can't tell.
So, like, and basically the sides of the World Trade Center looking down towards the ground, that's all a photo. And the roof, the actual, like, tip top of the roof is physical because they had to, like, have it where that glider could hang over the edge and cast a little bit of a shadow.
Yeah, they made, like, it looks like little blocks, you know, along the edges of where the roof is. And, like, it looks like they even maybe put some, like, pebbles in there, you know, so it's, like, not just a flat surface or something.
Insane.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Because it looks great.
Yeah, it does. And they're wiggling the glider up and down. They said they just had to make sure that, like, the shadow doesn't go in a place that it shouldn't, like on, you know, like down on the wall of the World Trade Center or something. So you just have to watch where the shadows are and just make sure it makes sense. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
John Dykstra wants $3 million, and New World Pictures is like, fuck all that. We got some color pencils, a copy machine. Dennis over here eats a box of Cheerios every day. We'll have New York in a couple of weeks. Because to me, it looks fantastic.
You also have to think, not only are they having to make it look good, but they have to make it match the rest of the movie. So they're having to match the lighting and match the color scheme, the color temps, and all of this stuff, match what Dean Cundey was doing on location in St. Louis and what Dean Cundey was doing in the sound stages in Los Angeles. So they have to make it look cohesive to the rest of the movie as well, which is a big part of what Cameron contributed to it, because like I said, he's credited as like the director of photography for the special effects unit. So that's kind of like what he's there. That's one of the things that he's there for, other than obviously building and helping build the models and paint the matte paintings, is he's having to make it look cohesively like the rest of the movie, because otherwise it would take you right out.
Yeah, and he is obviously doing a lot. I mean, the reason I I honestly wanted to mention a lot of these guys' names because I think in the, like Robert Skotak, for instance, he talks about, he was like, man, this was a runner-up for special effects at like the Saturn Awards. He was like, but of course, he was like, in the credits, I am third matte painter. Poor guy.
Another one of my favorite effects in this movie, and this is probably another one of those like effects stories that will blow your mind, just because the solution to the problem feels so lo-fi but looks so good on screen. But it's those wireframe animations that we see on the computer monitors, like when Snake is landing on the World Trade Center and you see like his screens and you see the city and it's just these like wireframe outlines, like neon colored outlines of the buildings. That's another very clever kind of cheat that the effects department pulled off. I mean, Carpenter, he originally was thinking we'd use high-tech computer graphics, but in the early 80s, those types of effects were prohibitively expensive for a production of this size, even for such a simple scene like that. So instead, an animator named John Wash, he built a miniature model of the city out of cardboard, painted it all black, lined the building edges with white tape, and then filmed it under a black light to make the edges of the buildings glow, creating the illusion of a wireframe animation. So all that quote-unquote animation that you see is in fact live action footage.
I know I'm a nerd, but movie magic is just so fucking cool to me. Especially with something like this, I feel like everything just holds up pretty well for the most part, and there's no real CGI or anything, and it still looks good. And I think that specific effect is something you just take for granted. That's like, that's just a computer image that they threw on there, but it's not.
It's not.
My wife was not nearly as impressed when I was trying to tell her about it while we're watching the video. Like, that's not even a real computer image. They just like painted this black and put some tape on it.
Somebody built that with their hands and figured out how to do that without computers. To me, that's impressive. Not to say anything about, I mean, computer animation is an art on its own, and those artists are incredibly talented to be able to pull off what they do. But in a world where that wasn't an option yet, to be able to do something that looks computer generated, like 3D computer generation, and then to find out that it was actually just, they pulled it off physically, that's wild to me. And I love that. Like you said, it's movie magic. That's the kind of movie magic that I love. That's the kind of movie magic that I get excited to find, like those stories working on this show. It's the kind of movie magic that made me want to do a podcast about how movies were made to begin with.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting that like even in The Fog, they used the miniatures for like the boat out at sea and stuff like that. And I, honest to God, some nerds are going to call me so stupid. I know there's people on the internet that are like, fucking duh. But I never thought about it on The Fog. It never even crossed my mind, which is the idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's an illusion. There are some movies where miniatures look like miniatures. I don't think The Fog is the case. I don't think Escape from New York is the case. I think it looks good. I mean, when miniatures are used well, it's the case with any special effect. Any special effect that's used well, you shouldn't be thinking about how it got done.
You save that for this show.
Yeah, that's what we talk about. We're going to point it all out to you, so now that's all you'll think about when you watch it.
Right. So at least watch it once without knowing that.
You're right.
No, it's just crazy because then you watch that and you're thinking like, God dang, man, what's stopping you from making a blockbuster? You just need some black paint and reflective tape and a black light. The military in this movie is tracking Snake on posters they could have bought at Spencer's Gifts.
Right. It does help to have a Dean Cundy on your team.
It sure does, that son of a bitch.
That does help.
There is more to it, and it's not just like, I think earlier I said anybody could do it. I mean, no, it's like these people are talented as hell. It's just crazy that their minds make this work. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. Like we said, when you see it on screen, you're not even supposed to think about it because it's supposed to just look right. It's also like when you see how it's even made, it seems so simple.
Well, I mean, movies are just, a good movie crew is filled with so many people that they don't really get the credit that they deserve because their name is like really far down on the list of credits of where there are hundreds of other people, but their contributions make the movie. That's what I love about movies in general and the way they're made is that it is truly a collaborative effort. Yes, I would consider John Carpenter an auteur. He's running the show. This is a John Carpenter movie, but he can't do it on his own. He can't do every job on a movie on his own. He's directing the orchestra, but the orchestra is important. Every member of that orchestra is important, right? I've been reading this book about Wes Anderson, and he's got this guy, and I wish I could remember his name, but I obviously didn't write this down for a John Carpenter episode. But he's got this guy who he met, is an Indian guy who he met when they were filming the Darjeeling Limited in India, who has kind of become his like go-to camera grip on his movies. And this guy just sometimes, Wes Anderson has a very specific aesthetic, and he wants to pull off a shot in a very specific way that most film equipment, it's not possible. You can't do it. Like on the Darjeeling Limited, they're shooting on a real train. How are we going to do this without a dolly being visible in the scene when we want to do a dolly shot? So this guy creates this rig that hangs from the ceiling that nobody's ever created before. He creates these rigs where you can do a dolly shot that turns at a perfect 90-degree angle because that's what Wes Anderson wants it to look like. Well, nobody else has ever done this before, so how do we pull it off? We invent something new. That's what this guy does on his movies. And I'm reading this, I'm like, if you saw his name in the credits, you wouldn't think twice about it. But then you realize what he's contributing to the movie, and it's integral to the final product. Just like every single thing that these guys in this effects department are doing, it's integral to the final product of the film. That's why we love to like showcase these below the line folks on the, even though, yes, the focus of this series is John Carpenter, but if we can give praise to any of these other people below the line, they're the workhorses that help these things get made.
Yeah, well, they make some really cool shit, and somewhere in between Dean Cundey and John Carpenter, they're shooting the movie in such a way that also helps that it feels real. It all feels like it should. And the guy, I mentioned he was like third matte painter. This movie, I was looking it up because he was like, we were runners up for like special effects that year. And I looked it up and it was the Saturn Awards, I think the Juniper Awards or something like that. But I don't think it was the actual Academy Awards. It would have been the 82 Academy Awards, and Raiders of the Lost Ark won.
Well, Saturn Awards is like specific to science fiction.
Raiders of the Lost Ark won the Academy Award, which led me to another just little fun fact that I'll throw in here for you that's somewhat related. That same year, Tron was disqualified for best special effects because it used actual computer effects. Like they weren't sure how to tackle that, and they didn't think that was fair, so they like disqualified it. Though that was interesting when like this movie's over here like faking computer effects, but like Tron's actually using real effects.
Interesting. Wow.
Oh, another little fun fact: these models for New York were struck, repainted, modified a little bit, and reused in Blade Runner.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
Which came out in 82, so the same year as The Thing, at the same summer as The Thing, I believe. All right, so once this film, they finish filming finally, it hits the editing room, and in the editing room, Carpenter, he exercised complete creative control, as he had always done, tweaking the film's pacing with his editor. In this case, it's a new editor named Todd Ramsey. He's trying to ensure that the narrative moved with the precision of a ticking clock, because I think that's very important with this movie. In fact, something I pointed out to you, I texted you a couple days ago, because it just hit me when I was rewatching this movie. I was like, every single one of John Carpenter's movies so far, up to this one, and really including The Thing to an extent, but everything up to this one, not counting Dark Star, but all the ones we've talked about on this series, take place within like a 24-hour period. It's all like within like a very short, it's all within one day or one night. And a lot of them do have this ticking clock aspect to them. Michael Myers, he's in Haddonfield because of it's Halloween. That's the anniversary. Assault on Precinct 13, it's them just trying to survive the night. But The Fog is the biggest example where, like, this is all happening because it's the another anniversary, but the anniversary of the founding, the shipwreck where all these people on the ship died. So it's all sort of this ticking clock thing, but none more so than in Escape from New York, where there is a literal ticking clock that once that alarm goes off, Snake Plissken's head is going to explode, basically. So the editing had to reflect that. It had to move very quickly to get you to be on board with that pacing. And that meant that one ambitious sequence had to go. Early cuts of the film began with a sprawling 10-minute prologue that portrayed the high-tech bank robbery that led to Snake Plissken's capture. To give the heist a clean, futuristic look, the production actually traveled to Atlanta. So they'd filmed all this other stuff in St. Louis or Los Angeles, except for that one shot in New York. But for this scene specifically, they traveled to Atlanta, Georgia, to film inside the city's brand new, ultra-modern MARTA transit lines. Now, I've ridden the MARTA, Gary, and clean is definitely not a word that I would ever use to describe my experience on the MARTA. But, this is more than 40 years ago at this point, so I guess it was brand spanking new at the time.
We've ridden the MARTA together to go into Music Midtown.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, this scene, I wanted to say it was the moment that Snake is pissed at Brain for in the movie, but I don't think it's actually that.
No, I don't think so.
The plot is essentially in this scene, if you haven't seen it, it's on the DVD now, but Snake is disguised as a maintenance man, and he's robbing a futuristic bank. It's patrolled by robots, and once they get the money, Snake and his partner hotwire a subway train that supposedly runs underground all the way from Florida to San Francisco, which is impressive.
That's a long tunnel.
Yeah, they think they've escaped, but basically U.S. police force is waiting for them at San Francisco terminal, I think, and then they shoot Snake's partner, take Snake down. And they were busted ass to make this scene, too. I don't know when in the timeline this exactly took place, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
I know that in the commentary for the scene, it's Kurt and John talking about it, and Kurt says his biggest memory is like they were in a hurry. He had to do the run down the terminal like 8 times. And so he was just like, you were killing me that day. But then also in the middle of that, like the dolly broke. And Kurt says he remembers that he thought most directors would have been like, well, okay, we're screwed. But he said that Carpenter just went and grabbed the camera and threw it on some kind of cart. I think he said it might have been the sound cart or something. And he just placed it on there and held it in place. It was like, we got to go. Let's keep going. And just like started pushing the cart along.
Wow.
Anyway, I got to say, the commentary with Kurt Russell and John Carpenter, those two guys hanging out, you don't hear John Carpenter sound very happy or laughy very often.
They laugh a lot. They're like giggling a lot.
They bond really well. They seem like they are just perfect together.
Yeah, they're buddies, you can tell. Well, when Carpenter screened this cut of the film, he realized that this sequence was dragging down the film's momentum because it took nearly 15 minutes before Snake even reached the perimeter of Manhattan Island. And worse yet, seeing Snake get outsmarted and captured by a group of basic, guards, policemen, completely stripped away the mythic aura that Carpenter and Russell had created for the character. He realized that it was a lot more effective to let audiences' imagination do all the work.
Yeah, some places you'll see this listed, maybe even at IMDb trivia or something, that like this on a test screening, they realized it was a problem because the audience wasn't buying it or something. But everywhere else, like from the horse's mouth, I mean, it's basically, Carpenter even says like they're watching it and they're like, it softens him too much, is I think the way he put it. It gives him too much reason. Carpenter says he just realized he liked him arriving with attitude, and he is what you get. Like, that's just it.
Well, yeah, and you've got these people who are always alluding to his past and his, like, badass exploits of the past. It's a lot cooler, like, what you can think, like, what has this guy done to gain this reputation, rather than seeing it. Like, it makes him more of a mythological type of character.
And he's supposed to show up and be this guy that doesn't give a fuck about anything, really. And in the scene, his buddy gets shot right at first, and he leaves, but then he comes back for his buddy. Yeah. And his buddy ends up getting shot to death after that, and then it costs him. He gets caught because of it or whatever. So I can also see that being like, we showed some sympathy here. You know, let's not show that, right. Like let's keep him hard. That's why they brought in Dick Warlock.
Well, Carpenter makes the executive decision to cut this sequence completely, choosing instead to launch straight into the action at the perimeter checkpoint.
For over 20 years, that footage was considered lost because the original negative for it just went missing. And it wasn't until 2003 that they found a work print of the bank robbery. It was like in a literal underground salt mine film depository in like Hutchinson, Kansas or something. They like found this thing and they brought it back. So it came out on a special edition, but like later in the 2000s that you can actually watch the scene.
Yeah, it's on the Shout Factory Blu-ray that I've got, has it on there. Well, Escape from New York also marked the genesis of one of genre cinema's greatest musical partnerships. See, up until now, Carpenter had really done all of his own music, either solo or, he had Dan Wyman helping him, but Dan Wyman wasn't like composing. He was more like assisting with the synthesizer. Carpenter was doing all of the composing. But with this film, he recruited a musician named Alan Howarth. Is it Howarth or Howarth? How do you say it?
I think I have said it both ways, so I don't know.
Well, I'll say Howarth. I don't know. Sorry, Alan, if you're listening. But Howarth's music career, I went in a slight rabbit hole looking into him. But he had started doing music in the late 60s, early 70s. He played in some rock bands around Ohio before landing a gig as a keyboard roadie for the legendary jazz fusion group Weather Report. A bit of a synthesizer prodigy, he eventually broke into Hollywood using a synthesizer to create custom warp drive and transporter sounds for Star Trek The Motion Picture.
To stick with him for just a second, it's definitely one of those stories that just, I don't know, it's just a weird Hollywood story, but he says like basically in interviews that he had this like big burly biker friend who gave him the opportunity. He said he's not the kind of guy that you would expect any opportunities to ever come from, is how he describes it. But he said that basically this buddy of his, Howarth, had been working on, or Howarth, I don't know, I guess I said Howarth. He was working on his wife's like student film. That was like the only stuff he had as a background. But this biker friend happened to be working on like Paramount Studio. He was in a building there and heard these two guys talking about sound effects for Star Trek. And so he said that his buddy was just this kind of guy, was just like, oh, you guys got to talk to my buddy Alan. Like, he fucking knows all that shit, man. He's the dude you want to see. They were like, well, what's he done? It was like, well, he works with the Weather Report. And he said the guys were even like the Weather Report, like, which channel? What are we talking about? Their information gets exchanged. They call him up. They're like, you want to give this a shot? And he's like, okay. He tells them, we got to have you make a sound effect. Like, we're looking for something, like it's the Starship Enterprise is going from warp 1 to warp 7. How does that process sound? And so he sat in his dining room and made it and recorded it. And just, where's Todd when you need him?
Right?
For shit like this.
It's the second time we've mentioned Star Trek The Motion Picture during this series, because remember, John Carpenter got offered the chance to write it back in the day. Right. Of all the episodes for Todd to not be on. I mean, I guess that's all of them now.
R.I.P. Todd.
All right, he's still alive. He's still talking about Star Trek. Well, the editor on Star Trek The Motion Picture happened to be a guy named Todd Ramsey. And that's everybody in Star Trek. That's where our Todd would come in. But Ramsey, when he landed the job editing Escape from New York for John Carpenter, he told Carpenter, he's like, you just have to meet the synth wizard that I worked with on Star Trek. So John Carpenter agrees to meet him. It's a pretty low key. It's about as low key as it gets. They met at Howarth's little rented house in Glendale, California, where Alan had crammed a recording studio into his dining room. So he was working straight out of his dining room. Carpenter sat down, listened to a few music cassettes that Alan had prepped, looked at the wall of synthesizers, which he had built himself, of course, and he just deadpanned. He's like, all right, man, let's do it. And their dynamic was perfect because they kind of balanced each other's strengths. Carpenter was a melodic minimalist. He just wanted to sit at a keyboard, look at the footage, and play. He didn't need to know how the machines actually worked. I don't think he cared how a synthesizer actually worked as long as he had somebody there who could help him. He famously told Howarth, he said, quote, it's your job to make it work, keep it in tune, and make sure the red recording light is on when I press a key. So that was his instruction. And Howarth was the technical brain that made it all come together. Because this is 1980 or so when they were doing this. The MIDI standard hadn't even been invented yet, meaning you couldn't easily lock electronic instruments together to play in sync. Before this movie, film composers had to time their keyboard tracks manually using a stopwatch.
It's fucking nuts. I can't even imagine how annoying this is. But so on the synth wizardry, besides the fact that this guy has, at this point, is a synth wizard, quote unquote, there, and he's built his reputation just because of this biker friend of his just selling his shit to Paramount for Star Trek. The beat of this film and all of this, the hustle involved here, I found like an interview on some other podcast or something where he was talking, Howarth, and he talked about like these drums that Carpenter wanted. And he said he literally drove to this guy named Roger Lynn's house, who was an inventor. And he bought one of the very first 10 or 20 Lynn LM1 drum machines ever manufactured. Like, he bought it for this movie to like do the soundtrack for it. And that custom sync you're talking about, there's a 24-track machine. And if Carpenter wants to fix a musical key 3 minutes into a scene, you can't just like skip ahead and change something. Like, you have to push play and sit and wait for 3 minutes while all the clocks ring down to hit a single note. Basically, like, you got to nail the timing. You got to wait for the spot you need to fix if you don't get it right, which is just nuts to me.
Yeah. And Howarth revolutionized the process by engineering a custom way to synchronize electronic instruments directly with a video playback of the movie, matching the tracks directly to the actor's dialogue. So this is a huge step just in film composing in general. So together there in Howarth's dining room, him and Carpenter largely improvised that cold, pulsing, melancholic electronic score that really defined the urban dread of the film. Like, I was watching this again this week and just thought, if any other director had made this, or if John Carpenter hadn't done the score, if it had just a traditional film score, it would be a completely different movie. And most directors or most composers would do a more bombastic orchestral score, but using that like very minimal synthesizer score to this just changes the entire vibe of this type of movie.
Well, we're probably going to find out, but we'll talk about that later. We'll find out what happens when another director with another score hits it. Kurt Russell praises the score all through that commentary too. He's just always like, this is the best score. This is so cool. And to be fair, he always is talking about Snake Plissken's the favorite role he's ever had too. So he's all in on this too. But a few things I wanted to mention were the score is the synths, but it's not 100% electronic. Like, they actually got a real acoustic piano up in like Howarth's place, and that like eerie sound at the beginning of the movie when the camera goes up the Manhattan wall, he's like taking the dampers off of the piano and he's just hitting raw strings. Like,
oh, wow.
There's a scraping sound when the crazies are coming up out of the floorboards, and that's him, like he's got like a pedal steel guitar with like a slide, like he's just like banging on it or something. And so just kind of neat, like they use like different tactics. But Howarth is awesome and he's kicking ass here, but he does admit that in some interviews he just says like, my main job was to prep the studio so that John Carpenter can walk in, light a cigarette, and drink coffee, and he wants to play keys. He plays something and says, give me something else. So, I just love the visual of Alan Howarth. It's just like modifying instruments and dragging pianos around and syncing 24-track tape machines, and John Carpenter just like walks in and lights a Marlboro and just hits the synthesizer. It's like, yeah, okay, that's
nailed
good.
it.
Print that.
But I mean, it does create a pretty major collaboration between the two, because Howarth goes on to be a composer in his own right. He composes Halloween 2, Halloween 3. I mean, he did several of the sequels. I think he even did like The Curse of Michael Myers.
Oh, he's on 4 too, I think.
Yeah, and he does
John Carpenter credit.
Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, Christine. I think he co-did just like he did on this one. So like these guys worked together for a long time. Well, when Escape from New York was released on July 10th, 1981, it opened during a brutally competitive summer blockbuster season. Just a few weeks prior, Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter's favorite director, Steven Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark had landed and was completely dominating the global box office. And yet, Escape from New York became a commercial victory. Even in such a crowded field. This is Carpenter's third commercial success in a row. On that lean $7 million budget, the movie hauled in over $50 million worldwide.
That wasn't just a hit either for them. That's AFCO Embassy's biggest opening weekend in the studio's history at the time.
Wow.
Pulled in $4.1 million just from, I think I read like 579 screens.
Wow.
So it was crazy. Kurt Russell had a story in the commentary too about going to see the movie. Like he took like 7 members of his family or something to see it. I think he says they went in Harlem, and he couldn't convince the guy that was working the ticket counter that he was actually in the movie. So he was like, I actually bought tickets to go see this movie. He says that when they went in, he just brings up, there was like, the audience that I saw it with was almost entirely black. And he said that they fucking loved it. He said as soon as the end of the movie hit, they were just like screaming and hollering and losing their minds. He said it was like one of the best experiences he's ever had, like watching a movie.
Well, these days, the film is widely regarded as a high point in Carpenter's career, and honestly, a high point in 80s genre cinema. But at the time, the critical response was surprisingly kind of split. There were some high-profile critics that completely understood what Carpenter was going for. Richard Corliss, for example, gave the movie a glowing review in Time magazine, urging moviegoers to trade ordinary entertainment for, quote, the hothouse humidity of their own paranoia. Which is a great quote.
That's a great line.
Yeah. Vincent Canby over at the New York Times championed it as well, calling it one of the best escape movies of the season. I'm not sure if that was an intentional pun, but I'll take it.
Was Escape from Witch Mountain 2 out that same year or something?
But not every critic felt that way. Roger Ebert gave it a bit of a mixed review, complaining that Kurt Russell was trying too hard to shake his clean-cut Disney image, and that Donald Pleasence wasn't believable as the president, which I would argue is kind of the point.
Right.
And Ebert's fellow Chicagoan David Kerr panned the film in the Chicago Reader, writing that the movie gave audiences too little of too much.
I don't even know how to take that.
The too little of too much?
I've only heard it from David Kerr and my wife.
Hey. I I think it was too much. I think it was too much of too little.
Actually, my wife was. My wife was the mirror image of that.
But history, of course, I think has proven the detractors wrong, because Escape from New York, it didn't fade away after that summer in 1981. It became a cultural touchstone. While post-apocalyptic stories had previously claimed the open desert highway, stuff like Mad Max, Carpenter took contemporary anxieties and locked them in the recognizable grid of the American metropolis. He transformed a familiar skyline into a lawless frontier, setting the visual standard for a decade of urban dystopian cinema. You mentioned like Blade Runner earlier. I feel like Blade Runner grew out of this movie to an extent, at least visually. And at the center of it all is Snake Plissken. Snake's not your traditional action hero, and he certainly isn't an unstoppable machine. We compared him to John McClane earlier, and I think that's pretty apt because he does get beat up. He limps. He is morally ambiguous. He relies on raw, hyper-focused competence just to survive the next 10 seconds, with zero allegiance to the fascist police state or the criminals ruling the streets. When you really look past the action beats and the cool synth score, Escape from New York is a deeply cynical film, one that reflected Carpenter's and the nation's worldview at the time when he wrote it. Most sci-fi stories are sort of, they're usually kind of preoccupied with technological progression, with how the future advances, but Carpenter made a movie that's really about regression, about how society breaks itself back down into a primitive feudal state. Because look at how the movie treats the most recognizable areas of Manhattan. Those legendary pillars of American wealth, culture, and liberty. They're totally subverted in this movie. The Statue of Liberty, the literal symbol of freedom, is turned into a heavily armed military checkpoint. You've got a Broadway theater that's reduced to a makeshift camp where inmates scavenge for food while watching a cheap cabaret show. This place where people would usually have spent hundreds of dollars just to go watch a show, right? The roof of the World Trade Center, which was for decades the symbol of American capitalism, becomes nothing but a lonely, abandoned runway for Snake's glider. Carpenter he's showing you a world where the American dream, the capital A, capital D, American dream, it didn't just fail, it's rotted from the inside out. And I think this is where the structural parallels with old Hollywood Westerns comes into play. Because in those films, you usually have a clear distinction where you've got the civilization on one side and the untamed lawless wilderness on the other. But Carpenter kind of blurs that line by arguing that the fascist police state outside the wall and the savage criminal underworld that are inside are basically the exact same thing, right? They're mirror images of each other. Both systems are autocracies governed by fear, by military strength, and by the exploitation of the weak. Carpenter likes to say that he's not a political filmmaker, but I think that we keep finding ways to prove that that's not quite true. He just doesn't like to talk about it, I think, except in They Live. He's pretty adamant that about what, I mean, They Live is the most blatantly political, I think. But
I did see an interview with him while I was researching this movie that talks about, and maybe I just got to it in like Prince of Darkness or something, but to not to derail everything, but to your point, he does mention he doesn't get too involved in politics, he says, but his movies do turn out to have, they reflect political things. But he says he doesn't consider himself I think the way he put it was I don't always have solutions to the problems, so I'm not trying to tell you what to do about it. I just show you what I see.
He's still presenting his worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the case of in Escape from New York, you've got, on one side, you've got Bob Houck, a lawman, a quote-unquote good guy, or should be a good guy, but he's also the guy who straps microscopic explosives to a man's neck to force compliance. That's not good guy behavior. The Duke is a crime boss. He uses human beings as target practice. There's no, moral high ground here. These are just two rival warlords fighting over a political chess piece. And I think that's why Snake Plissken resonated so deeply with audiences stepping out of the cynical landscape of a post-Watergate, post-Vietnam America. Because Snake is a former war hero. They say that at the beginning of the movie when we first are introduced to him. But he realized that the system that he fought for was a lie. So he left it behind. And a lot of guys in Vietnam felt that way. They felt like they'd been duped. They felt like what they had been fed was a lie because it was. So Snake doesn't have a political agenda necessarily. He doesn't want to save the world. He doesn't, and, in his own iconic words, he doesn't give a fuck about their war or their president. And I think that's why the final scene is so satisfying to me, at least. When Snake hands the cassette tape over, and it's he switched it out for another cassette. He's not just playing a funny joke. It's not just a prank. By swapping out the president's vital global summit broadcast for a cheap recording of, it's like a Broadway musical number, so thing that Cabby's listening to, he's basically sabotaging both sides, both factions. He refuses to let the fascist government win, and he refuses to let the criminals win. He walks away into the darkness, leaving the broken machinery of the world to choke on its own ridiculousness. He's like, fuck it. Everyone sucks, is basically what he's saying.
Yeah, the thing about him is like, I mean, he's kind of a guy who's, I don't know. It's almost like he starts to believe in something and it always gets ripped away. Which actually, when I think about John Carpenter and like some of the early stuff we talked about, it's like how he'd keep getting like, he'd make some money and then like get nothing out of it or to get nobody or something. It almost seems like, oh, it's easy to have that worldview. I can kind of see like a similarity here on like, you just feel like everybody's out for themselves and you're just kind of like, fuck it, whatever. But yeah, and I see even more like when you're watching the movie or when I watched it this last time, just like why that bank robbery scene doesn't work. Like, is it cool to know a little bit more about Snake? Sure. But the thing is like he is cut off. So when we talked about it, somebody needs a nap, the person having a problem with him walking away with just the tape playing, like it is a prank in a sense. And he's just kind of like, almost like he's rubbing the song in your face basically. But he's just kind of like, it's all fucked, and I'm showing you it's all fucked, and I don't care, and I'm out.
I mean, right before that scene, he had just saved the president, and the president afterwards won't give him 2 seconds of his time. Like, all he's concerned about, he's like, yeah, thanks. Well, he asked him, like, what do you think about all the people who died trying to get you out of there? And the president just kind of waves it off. Oh, yeah, I thank them for their sacrifice. And then he's like, we got to get on camera in 2 minutes. Basically, fuck off. You served
like
your purpose.
Canned response.
Fuck off.
Yeah, canned response, and then just, we got to move on. We got TV. So, I don't know. It's just like he's already, and I mean, you could get this understanding from him, like, I mean, at the beginning of the movie, I mean, when he first gets there, I mean, one of the first things he sees when he's like rolling through like some of the apartments is like this girl getting passed around between these guys or whatever, and he's just kind of walking through and he sees it, but he just keeps moving. Like, it's just like, that's, this it's not my business. Society's already eating itself. And so it's just collapsed. And I don't know. Even at the end, it's not like a normal action movie in the sense that like you're waiting for the big bad guy showdown. I mean, the biggest showdown he has is with Ox Baker in the middle of a ring, and that's because he's forced into the fight. But even with the Duke, I mean, Snake's just trying to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't care about fighting the Duke or like taking down the Duke because he's lawless or anything. He's not like really making a judgment on the Duke. He's just kind of like, I have to do this job to save my own life.
Right.
I have to get out of here. And so the only person he even starts to share like or seem to show any sentiment towards is maybe Maggie. Like that he, seems to want her to leave, but and then she stays behind, and even then he kind of gives her a smile, like he just understands, and he's moving on, And so it's just kind of the person he is. I think even in one interview I saw Carpenter say, like, he's kind of, I think he even actually described him as like sexless or something. Like, they're just like, like he's not even interested in like, there's the scene in Chock full of nuts, and there's Maggie that he kind of exchanges some glances with. But for the most part, like, Snake doesn't really have an interest in even that. Like, he's just kind of his own survival and nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, that's he's looking out for number one basically, but he also realizes that everyone on both sides is corrupt. I mean, not every person, obviously. I mean, Maggie is not corrupt necessarily, or the girl in the Chock full of nuts, and I'm sure there could be good people on the other side of the wall as well. But
he showed some sympathy for Cabby when, like, when Cabby dies, but
Yeah, but I mean, he's not here to play hero. He's been forced into this situation to begin with. I mean, he was, like I said, he was coerced by Bob Houck, or I mean, he was basically threatened with his life by Bob Houck to do this. I mean, they dangled his pardon in front of his face, but I don't think they were going to take no for an answer. He was going to go in there one way or the other. At least this way, he had a chance to get out. But again, he's got explosives in his neck, so it's like comply or you're fucking dead. Do what we say or you're fucking dead. So that's the point of view that Snake is coming from, is survival, essentially. But if I'm ranking John Carpenter movies, this isn't at the very top, but it's pretty damn high, man. I love this movie the more I watch it, and a big part of it is, obviously it's gorgeous to look at. It's Dean Cundey doing his thing, and it's got a different look than some of the other Dean Cundey movies, but the way that he plays with light in this like really dark environment is incredible. And that score, man, that score by John Carpenter, like I said before, just gives it a vibe that no other movie in this genre quite ever nails. It really.
Yeah, well, you start thinking about like even like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies or something like that, like even the Predator, you know, like there's these like overwhelming scores that go behind, like, you know, the action hero and that sort of thing. This is all minimalist and like just kind of gritty.
Yeah,
and
it just makes it feel unique and different.
Yeah. One thing I did read when I was like reading about how like people took this movie, I was wondering like how were audiences viewing it? You know, Kurt Russell talks about the audience like cheering and things like that. Anyway, I read this one review from a guy named I honestly don't know if it's a guy, gal, whatever. C.J. Henderson. It was a magazine critic from Pegasus magazine. They were describing the movie at the time, and they said that the word of mouth was totally schizophrenic at the time. Like they said, the people who wanted mindless sex and violence thought that the movie was too slow and stopped going. And they said, while the people who would have actually appreciated the sharp satire and sci-fi stayed home because they assumed it was trashy grindhouse. And so that was just an observation they had at the time, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But some people did say that one thing that worked for it, I think even Carpenter himself did say, was like this whole, you know, while at the time he wrote it, it was based on these more cynical views of things. At the time it came out, they were dealing with like the Iran hostage crisis.
Yeah.
And so it felt like it felt like this movie was made to like hit close to home for that as well. So like people were going in like hoping for a win or something, you know, to see the like guy get the person out or whatever.
Yeah, which I mean, which is what happens. I wouldn't say it's a bombastic like superhero kind of like action movie ending, but he gets the job done. That's another one of those things that we've talked about where like a lot of these John Carpenter movies they follow these Hawksian Western archetypes where like Snake Plissken is sort of the gunslinger walking into town, doing the job, and he's just there to do the job well. He's just there. He's just good at he's good at what he does, you know, and that's he's all business, but that's what he's there for, and he gets the shit done.
Hey, even at the end, like Houck's like, I want to talk to you about another job. I got something to give you, you know, or like, you know, we'd make a good team or something like that. Snake blows him off, and it's just like, go fuck yourself. But
speaking of that scene, do you have any? So at the beginning of the movie, when the two of them are meeting in Houck's office, he says, Houck calls him Plissken, and he says, call me Snake. Then at the end of the movie, he calls him Snake, and he says, call me Plissken. Do you think there is a significant, I mean, it was obviously intentional, but what do you think the significance of that is? Or do you think that he's just being contrarian because he doesn't like this guy?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that too. Because at first it's like a running gag or something, you know, that is happening. But then all of a sudden there at the end, yeah, he changes it. So there was a couple of ways to read it. Like on one hand, my first thought was to say like, maybe I thought that he was getting some humanity and he was saying like, you know, it was like him having a little more hope or something. But then also I was trying to remember, and I think during the movie, sorry, I'm scattered here, but I think during the movie, like most people, like that he actually knew I can't remember how. A lot of people call him Snake. And I was trying to remember what Harry Dean Stanton calls him. And I can't remember if it was Snake or if it was Pliskin.
I think he calls him Snake, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, because what I was getting at basically is like, I was almost like, is that a sign of respect? Like he's saying, like, call me Pliskin? Like something about him is like respecting him a little more?
I don't know. I feel like it's just another fuck you. Like just, whatever you call me, I'm going to tell you to call me the opposite. It's
and it could be just that.
Yeah. Because he's definitely telling him to fuck off during that scene. So I don't think that he'd be showing him a sign of respect at the same time as telling him to fuck off.
Yeah, that's probably it. It probably is more of a you just don't know me.
Right.
Well,
Escape from New York proved that John Carpenter could conquer the action genre on his own terms, just as he had done with horror. It also cemented Kurt Russell as an action star in his own right, allowing him to shake off that squeaky clean Disney image forever. Naturally, the studio wanted to repeat the film's success by commissioning a sequel, and in 1985, Carpenter recruited a television writer named Coleman Luck to write the script, but Carpenter found the script to be far too light and campy, missing the grim tone that they were looking for, and so the character Snake Plissken, he basically sat on a shelf for another decade until Carpenter, Russell, and Hill finally reunited for Escape from L.A., released in 1996. Ironically, the sequel very much leaned into a campy, satirical tone that wasn't present in the original film. So when he didn't like Coleman Luck's script because of that, I guess sometime over the next decade, he's like, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's just do that. Because Escape from L.A., I like it for what it is. And I'm sure we'll talk about it on a future Carpenter series, but it's a wildly different tone from this movie. It's silly. It's a silly movie.
I can honestly say I'm excited to see it again because I legitimately have not watched it since it came out. Same with like Ghosts of Mars and stuff like that. It's been a long time since I've seen those movies.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking, like, as you were saying that, I wonder if it's anyway similar to, like, you know, how Tobe Hooper did like Texas Chainsaw, but then like Texas Chainsaw 2 is like a totally different tone, you know?
Yeah.
But probably not quite the same.
Not quite,
because
yeah.
I know there's a surfing scene in it. So
there is, yeah, very memorable. Well, after that, the franchise continued in other media. Marvel and Boom Studios published comic book spinoffs, including a crossover where Snake meets Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. There were also several tactical board games, and the premise was so influential that filmmaker Luc Besson heavily, let's say, borrowed from it for his 2012 movie Lockout, which led to a successful plagiarism lawsuit where a French court ordered Besson to pay damages to Carpenter. That's how blatantly he was ripping off this movie. Have you seen Lockout? Yeah. It's got Guy Pearce in it.
I don't remember if I saw it. I feel like I wanted to see it back in the day, and I don't remember if I ever actually watched it. So whatever that tells you, but I do remember seeing that come up in an interview recently that I watched with Carpenter, where he was basically like, you know, they were asking him about that situation, and he's like, "Look, I haven't seen the movie," and he's like, "They come to me and they say, this person's ripping you off, and we're going to sue them," and I say, "Fine." And then they do it, and then they give me a check. And he's like, but I did go back and read something about it. Like, I read an article, and they described the movie, and I was like, come on, Luke, you got to change something.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's in space, but other than that, it's like, I don't even remember when the trailer came out, and I was like, that looks like Escape from New York. Like, it's like, yeah. I think it's even the president's daughter or something that he has to rescue.
Yeah, it's something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they weren't even trying to hide it. It's wild, but Luc Besson's a piece of shit, so fuck him.
Oh, you were just laying it out on the line. We can't wait for our John Landis and Luc Besson series.
Yeah, one's a murderer, one's a rapist. Fuck them. But anyway, possibly the most enduring piece of the film's legacy happened in Japan, where legendary game designer Hideo Kojima used Escape from New York as the blueprint for his Metal Gear franchise, lifting Snake Plissken's look, archetype, and name to create his iconic protagonist, Solid Snake.
Oh, he is 100% Snake, and I mean, maybe his love for gaming is the only thing that stops Carpenter from suing him. Now, I mean, the story is not exactly the same. I mean, he is like breaking into something, so it very much has that siege thing going for it. But he also, by the way, when using cover, his cover name is Pliskin. So.
Oh yeah, and also his real name in the game is David, which happens to be Kurt Russell's actual first name. And Kojima has admitted that that's intentional. That's an intentional homage to Kurt Russell.
Nice.
Yeah. So he, it's basically Escape from New York mapped onto like a stealth game. I mean, it's a lone operative infiltrating a fortified, isolated territory to extract a target. Like it's there, but it's not like as blatant as Luc Besson. This feels more homage than anything.
Yeah. Well, another influence here too, and you kind of touched on it. And we would have heard it a little bit more in our further viewing segment for Cinema Shop Plus subscribers. But, if you want to talk about Blade Runner, tangentially related to that, William Gibson, who invented cyberpunk. Credits this film as the influence on his 1984 novel Neuromancer.
Oh, wow.
And so he says, I mean, as an influence on it. But,
sure.
He talks about the dialogue being a big part of it, especially like he says, like, for instance, like one of the quotes he had was like being intrigued in the movie because there's an exchange like where the warden says to Snake, "You flew the Gulf fire over Leningrad, didn't you?" And he was like, that always stood out to him. And it's just like, he was just like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, and it just turns out that there's these throwaway lines that they're just for a moment, but the casual reference can imply everything.
Well, that's like you made the Kessel Run in 10 parsecs or whatever in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Now, later on in Star Wars, they made that a thing. But in the first Star Wars, you're just like, well, I don't know what the fuck that means, but it sounds impressive. Like, I don't know what any of this, I don't know what you're talking about. But
yeah. So he mentions that. He just says that it was a big influence on Neuromancer, which is what creates that whole genre of cyberpunk.
And that's why we have Johnny Mnemonic because of John Carpenter, is what you're saying.
I would say at least partially because of John Carpenter. We have Johnny Mnemonic. We have Blade Runner. We have... I'm literally now on PlayStation. I switch between Toxic Commando, John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, I should say, and I'm playing Cyberpunk 2077.
Nice.
And even that movie, or that game, seems to reference, like, the feel of the city that you're in, like Night City. Like in the part I'm in now, you are quarantined within like this section of Night City and you're not getting out. And it's just like there's all these different gangs doing their own thing and you get like different missions. But it feels very Escape from New York. And so it's fun.
Well, I think these crossovers are the ultimate testament to what Carpenter and Russell achieved with this character and with this movie. Snake Plissken didn't just influence other filmmakers. He became the definitive archetype for the modern anti-authority rogue across really all of popular culture. Like he is sort of the blueprint for that type of character. And 45 years later, that cynical streak still hits just as hard, maybe even harder, as it did in the summer of 1981, cementing Escape from New York as the definitive blueprint for modern dystopian action cinema. I think this is like the king of the crop as far as that goes.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said at the very start of when we first started talking about this, it's like comfort food for me. Mm-hmm. I think it goes again to the, I don't know, you've called John Carpenter an auteur. It just... I think that's the only way to describe him, just because of the fact that it's like when we go from Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13 to Halloween to Even the Fog to this movie, all different movies, like they're different stories completely. And I mean, the closest you're going to get is Assault and maybe Escape from New York, I guess. It's just like... they're all very distinctively John Carpenter too. And so, and I just love the way it makes me feel to watch them.
Well, next time on Cinema Shock, it is the final episode of John Carpenter, or the final film, I should say. The final film in John Carpenter, The Shape of Dread. I mean, we'll get back to Carpenter one day, but we're going to wrap this initial series up next time. So with 3 huge box office hits in a row. Carpenter seemed unstoppable. And for his next film, he would re-team with Kurt Russell to create his most ambitious and most expensive film to date. And it seemed like a surefire hit, a film that combined his love of both horror and sci-fi, and it's a remake of a film produced by his hero Howard Hawks. So what could possibly go wrong? It's going to go great. It's going to be a big hit. It's going to make a ton of money, right? On the next episode of Cinema Shock, we are, of course, talking about John Carpenter's The Thing, which I'll go ahead and say, it's my favorite John Carpenter movie, so I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, and it's also going to end his career. So congratulations.
It's not going to end it. It's a speed bump.
Yeah,
it's a speed bump. But I'm excited to talk about The Thing. It's going to be this might be another 3-parter like Halloween. Who knows? Because it's
yeah. I was gonna throw in that, you know, even though I made the joke about it ending his career, no, it's also going to be one of the most fun movies to talk about, and there's going to be, god damn, if I got into the movie magic of Escape from New York, I'm going to lose my stupid fucking mind and. The Thing.
Just knowing what, just talking about, we could talk about Rob Bottin's work on that movie for 2.5 hours, but we won't. Yeah. Maybe we will. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
I'm going to find a tangent to go off on too. I'll see if I can. We'll see if I can fit Chuck Norris in here somewhere,
or professional wrestling, or Star Trek.
Right.
Anyway, that's all we got for this one. Gary, where can you be found on the internet?
I am at This Is Gary Horne on all of the things.
And I am at Justin_Bishop. The show is at cinema_shock, cinemashock.net, cinemashock.net/plus if you want to join and get all the bonus stuff that we've been referencing, or if you want to get these extended episodes before everyone else. There's lots of benefits to joining Cinema Shock Plus. We appreciate everyone who's done it already. You guys help us keep this show rolling because it's a lot of work. And we're glad somebody appreciates it enough to throw us a few bones every month. So thank you very much. And I guess that's it for this one. Until next time.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.